Good day, doctor. My name is Tan Singh and my matrix number is 2999757. First, I will explain about the origin and the context. The institutional school emerged around 1900 in the United States as a response to the major social and economic challenges of that time. After the Civil War, the country experienced rapid industrialization, but this came with long working hours, poor living conditions, and job insecurity. There were growing inequalities, monopolies, and repeated recessions. While neoclassical economy focused on individualism and mathematical models, institutionalists believed this in not deeper social issues like power structure and cultural norms. They were influenced by the German historical school and thinkers like Thorstein Veblen and Richard Ely, who emphasized the need for reform over theory. Next, I will explain why it emerged as a reaction. The institutionalist economics arose as a reaction to the unrealistic assumptions of neoclassical economics. It rejected the idea that markets alone, with minimal government interventions, could deliver social well-being. Institutionalists pointed out that the economies face serious problems like monopolies, inequality, bad labor conditions, and recurring recessions. Rather than promoting socialism, they believed in reform that capitalism could be improved through proper policy and social planning. Next, I will explain about the key characteristic of institutional economy. First is holistic broad perspective. Institutional economy take a holistic view of the economy, seeing it as an interconnected whole rather than a collection of separate parts. It believes that economic actions are not just individual decisions made for profit, they are shaped by institutions, social norm, and collective behavior. It also connects economy with politics, law, sociology, and ideology. In this way, institutional economy focus on the social process and relationship behind economic outcome rather than just number of isolated behavior. And second is rejection of pleasure pain psychology. Institution economy reject the simple idea that people only act to seek pleasures and avoid pain, which is often assumed in traditional economies. They believe this view is too narrow and unrealistic. Instead, they draw from modern psychology, including ideas from Freud and behaviorism, to better understand how real human behavior works in economic settings. Each approach sees people as influenced by habit, culture, emotions, and social factors, not just by reward and punishment. The third one is Darwinian evolutionary approach. Institutional economy view the economy as something that is constantly changing, not fixed or static. It rejects static theories and instead emphasizes how things evolve over time. Rather than asking where is the ideal model, it's ask questions like how did we get here and where are we going to understand economic development. To explain economic development, institutionalists rely on insight from many fields such as history, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and other social sciences. Next is rejections of normal equilibrium. Institutionalists reject the idea that the economy naturally moves toward a stable equilibrium. Instead, they highlight a process called circular causation, where one change leads to another, creating a continuous cycle. Economic maladjustments like recessions or period of inflations are seen as normal part of the system, not as temporary exceptions. Because of this, institutionally support active government interventions to manage the economy and promote long-term stability. Next is clashes of interest. Institutionalist economy recognize that there are often serious conflict of interest between different social groups. Example include employer versus worker, big business versus small business, or consumer versus producer. These classes are a new natural part of economic life. Institutionalists argue that the government should play a neutral role in resolving this conflict and balancing the interests of all groups to help ensure fairness and economic efficiency. Next is liberal democratic reform. Institutionalists strongly oppose laissez-faire policy and believe that unregulated markets do not automatically lead to fairness or the best outcome. They argue that price alone cannot reflect true social well-being, so they support reform that aim to reduce inequality and ensure a more fair distribution of income and wealth. In their view, government has a key role in regulating market and protecting the public interest. And the last one is focus on institutions. Finally, institutional economy places a strong focus on institutions, not just formal organizations like banks, school, or labor union, but also informal systems like custom, traditions, and shared belief. These institutions shape how people behave and how the economy functions. Institutionalists believe that to understand and improve the economy, we need to study and sometimes reform these institutions that include improving things like credit system, controlling monopolies, protecting labor rights, and ensuring fair income distribution. They also support long-term economic planning to achieve stability and social progress.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Zuhair bin Hamizat, Nometri 299455. I will start by explaining what institutional economists mean by institution. Institutions are organized patterns of group behavior and belief. They guide economic life beyond just individual actions. Importantly, institutions are not just organizations like school, union, or bank. They also include custom, social habits, law, ideology, and tradition that are deeply rooted in a culture. So, what exactly do we mean by institution? To understand this better, let's look at some example. Unionism is an institution. Is it a collective labor organization with its own ideology, character, and method of operation, influencing economic outcome beyond individual worker actions? Slavery was both an institution and a cultural belief system that shaped social and economic relations. Anti-communism, as a political ideology, has functioned as a socio-economic institution influencing policies and society. As we can see, institutions are more than just organizations. They influence behavior at the group level. Let's explore why understanding group behavior is essential in economic analysis. Institutional economy emphasizes that economic action goes beyond individual motive. Group develop distinct characters and behavior that influence economic result. For example, a union ideology and operational method cannot be understood by simply ending up what individual members do. Economic life is socially amended and shaped collectively, but group behavior doesn't exist in isolation. Economy is interwoven with many other social sciences. This brings us to broader perspective institutional economic state. Thus, institutional economics adopt a holistic and interconnected perspective. It views economic phenomena as evolving within and shaped by ongoing social institutions. This contrasts with approaches that consider economic behavior strictly in isolation from social context. Furthermore, economy is inseparable from other social disciplines such as politics, sociology, law, custom, ideology, tradition, and psychology. Economic institutions regulate and shape economic activity as part of larger social process, and institution economy adopt this broad interconnected perspective.
To everyone and doctor. My name is Anzanja. My metric number is 300360. Today, I'll be discussing a key term in political economy, which is power and vested interest. We will explore how economic power is distributed, how different groups have conflicting interests, why government intervention becomes necessary in an economic, and finally, we will dive into Thorstein Veblen's powerful critique of capitalism. The role of power. Power in our economy is closely tied to who owns what and who gets to make decisions. Wealthier groups, those with access to capital, political connections, and media influence, they tend to shape laws, policies, and public opinions to serve their interests. This imbalance leads to policy outcomes that often favor the powerful, like tax cuts for the rich or deregulation that harms workers and the environment. The government intervention. Given these imbalances, we can't really rely on the market alone to produce fair outcomes. That's where the government comes in. Its role is to regulate markets, protect less powerful groups, and ensure that the playing field is level. So, for example, like the monopoly market, so the government will come inside to the market to monitor them to prevent the uh, monopoly market. Now, government intervention can take many forms. For example, minimum wage laws, anti-monopoly regulations, labor protections, and public services. Without this kind of balance, vested interests will dominate unchecked. Let's look at Thorstein Veblen's critical. He identified a group he called the leisure class. It is an idea that inspired by Thorstein Veblen, who called the leisure class wealthy individuals who don't work for their status. Instead, they gain prestige through what he calls conspicuous consumption. For example, buying luxury goods not for utility but to display power and status. Veblen also argued that his behavior is not just wasteful, but it promotes values that distort society, also valuing consumption over productivity. Veblen also introduced the idea that big business often sabotages progress. Rather than maximize production for the good of society, businesses will limit output, delay innovation, or destroy surplus to keep prices and profits high. This is incredibly harmful, especially it holds back technological advancement and keeps people from accessing goods they need, all in the name of profit that the firms are to maximize the profit. Veblen critiques what he calls absentee ownership, a situation where those who own companies are disconnected from the people who actually run them or do the work. These owners make decisions based on financial gain, not on long-term sustainability or social impact. This leads to things like layoffs, environmental harm, or cost cutting that hurts workers, or for short-term shareholder returns.
Hi everyone, my name is Chong Shan and my trade number is 3001. Now I would like to talk about technology and structure. First, Thorstein Veblen introduced the concept of cultural lag to explain the disconnect between technological advancement and the stagnation of social institutions. He argued that while technology tends to evolve rapidly, driven by innovation and the pursuit of efficiency, social institutions often remain rooted in outdated customs, traditions, and mental habits. These institutions, because they are shaped by the past, are inherently creative and resistant to change. This creates inefficiency in society as institutions struggle to keep pace with the demand and opportunities of the modern industrial system. The result is a conflict between two opposing forces within the economy. On one side are engineers and technicians, motivated by the instinct of workmanship and committed to improving production through technical knowledge. On the other side are business owners and capitalists, whose primary motivation is profit. Rather than supporting innovation, these individuals often obstruct it, especially when technological progress threatens their market positions or profit margins. This divergence reveals a deeper flaw in the structure of capitalist economies, the misalignment between technological potential and institutional constraints. Now I would like to continue my presentation. According to Weber, the pursuit of profit by business owners not only causes inefficiency, but can also lead to deliberate sabotage of production. Through practice, such as the formation of monopolies, artificial restriction of output, and speculative manipulation of credit, business interests often place profitability above societal progress. Veblen described how absentee owners, those who control enterprise but are not involved in their culture, in their actual operation, disrupt the natural functioning of the industrial system. He believed that this tension between business and industry was deeply harmful to society. As a bold solution, Weber proposed the formation of a Soviet of technicians. This is a governing body composed of engineers and technical experts who will take charge of managing industrial productions. These technocrats, unlike profit-driven entrepreneurs, would be motivated by a spirit of tangible performance and guided by their deep understanding of technological systems. They would focus on efficiencies, productivity, and service to the community rather than financial gain. Weber envisions that Such a shift in governance would finally bring institutions in line with the realities of modern technology and allow society to fully benefit from its industrial capabilities. Although he recognized the practical challenge of transformation, Veblen believed it was essential for overcoming the stagnations and waste inherent in the capitalist system. Now I'll move on to the Galbraith innovations and the dependence effect. Building on Veblen's critiques of capitalist institutions, John Kenneth Galbraith brought renewed attention to the manipulation of consumer behavior in modern economies. One of his key contributions was the concept of the dependence effect. Galbraith argued that in advanced industrial societies, large corporations no longer respond to consumer demand in a passive way. Instead, they actively create consumer desires through advertising, marketing, and strategic product development. This flipped the classical notions of consumer sovereignty on its head. Traditionally, economists have assumed that producers respond to the needs and wants of consumers. However, Galbraith contended that production now shapes demands consumers are conditions to want what from products, not the other way around. As a consequence, what appears to be consumers' choice is often the result of corporate influence. This leads to what Galbraith called a social imbalance. Resources are disproportionately funneled into the production of private consumer goods, such as cars, electronics, luxury items, while public goods, such as education, transportation, infrastructure, healthcare, and environmental protection, are neglected. Because public goods are not advertised or marketed in the same way, they lack the artificial demand enjoyed by commercial products. The result is a society that is materially affluent yet institutionally impoverished, unable to meet collective needs despite its capacity to do so. Now I will continue my presentation. Despite writing in different eras, Veblen and Galbraith share a common vision. They believe that economic institutions must evolve in step with technological and social progress. Both thinkers recognize that the capitalist system as it currently operates is dominated by outdated structure and that prioritize private gain over public welfare. They argue that expert-led planning guided by knowledge rather than profit was essential to overcoming these flaws. Weber saw this in the form of software optimizations who could manage production with an eye toward efficiency and societal benefit. Galbraith similarly called for a rethinking of how resources are allocated, advocating for public investment and democratic control over large-scale economic decisions. Their critique went beyond surface-level reform. They targeted the underlying logic of capitalist institutions, which they saw as fundamental misaligned with the needs of a modern, interdependent, and technologically advanced society. Both thinkers urged for the development of new institutional frameworks that could better reflect the complexities of contemporary life. In this field, in their view, real progress would only come through deliberate, informed, and coordinated reform rooted in reason, guided by expertise, and focused on the common good rather than narrow interests of capitalists. That's all for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Fadli Zilekram bin Faizal. My metric number is 298835. I would like to continue the presentation. My topic is about the significance of empirical and historical method in the institutional school. So, first thing first, we need to go through about the what is these methods. First, the empirical methods relies on systematic observation, experimentation, and data collection to establish knowledge. It focuses on verifiable evidence rather than speculation. The next one is historical method examines past events, institutional developments, and cultural shifts to understand how they influence present conditions. Right, we go through to the next slide, which is what is actually the significance of empirical and historical method. Alright, the first method is empirical method. The first point is evidence-based understanding. Empirical research helps turn theories into something practical. For example, Wesley C. Mitchell used real economic data to show that things like recessions and profit changes are normal parts of a money-based economy, not just random events. Second point is testing hypotheses. Instead of just guessing or using logic alone, economists use data to test if their ideas actually works. Michel kept updating his theories as new data came in, showing that economic system changed over time. Third point is predictive power. Data helps economists see patterns and predict future change. For example, looking at how people actually buy things, like spending to show off, gives a more accurate picture than simple supply and demand charts. The last point for empirical method is policy development. Empirical research help guide smart policy. The National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, started by Michel, collects economic data that helps government respond to things like recessions, policies based on real data like inflation or credit conditions are more reliable than just theory. The second method is historical method. First point is contextualizing change. History helps us to see why institutions and behavior developed the way they did. For example, Veblen studied American society after the Civil War and showed how rising wealth led to social divisions and people spending just to show off. It's called conscientious consumption. Second is tracing evolution. Historical method shows that systems like labor laws or spending habits don't appear overnight, they evolve. For example, the New Deal policies come as a response to the Great Depression, and history help explain why they were necessary. Third point is comparative analysis. Once systems are in place, they often stick even if conditions change. For instance, capitalism or social class system don't easily shift. History shows how past decisions shape future outcomes. The last point is avoiding mistakes. In the historical method, sometimes good ideas can lead to problems later. Studying history shows how past events like the rise of credit or business cycle can spiral into crisis. Learning from the past helps us plan smarter for the future. Alright, for the next slide, I would like to explain these methods actually exist in this institutional school. So for the first method, empirical method, a key figure in institutional economics, Wesley C. Michels pioneered empirical research in business cycle. His statistical studies of economic fluctuations laid the foundation for institutions like the NBER, which continues to analyze economic trends through empirical methods. Alright, for the historical method, the founder of institutionalist economics, Thorstein Veblen, used historical analysis to critique capitalism and the leisure class. His evolutionary approach demonstrates how economic institutions evolve due to social habits, custom, and technological advancement. Alright, for the last slide for me, which is I would like to continue about the synergy between empirical and historical methods. When combines these methods, empirical and historical method offers several advantages to economic analysis, and this integration is central to the institutionalist school. The first is completeness and realism. The second one is theory revision and robust policy formulation. The third is interdisciplinary insights, and the fourth is bridging theory and practice. So the conclusion is the significance of empirical and historical methods lies in their joint ability to ground economic theories in observed reality while providing the context of evolution and change over time. Empirical methods offers the hard data needed to test, refine, and validate theories, ensure the models reflect observable trends in economic behavior. Meanwhile, historical methods supply the narrative and contextual layers that explain the origins, continuity, and transformation of institutions. For institutional economics like Veblen, Michel, and Galbraith, this integrated approach was essential to challenge static, abstract theories of neoclassical economics. Ultimately influenced reforms and government policies, they aimed at a more realistic understanding of modern capitalism. This approach not only enriched scholarly debates but also served as a practical guide for policymakers and researchers who wish to address complex contemporary challenges by drawing lessons from the past and testing them against real-world evidence. Thank you.
Hello everyone, today I will discuss the concept of interdependence by exploring it through a perspective of institution economics. The School of Economic Thought offers a critical alternative to the traditional view of economics, which often treats market as isolated system functioning independently from broader social, political, and institutional contexts. Traditional economic theory tends to model market as self-contained entities where individual actors, buyer and seller, interact primarily based on supply, demand, and price mechanism. It assumes that market operates smoothly and efficiently and on their own with little consideration of the surrounding institution, rules, norms, and social structure that influence economic behavior. In contrast, institutional economy emphasizes that economic activities and outcomes are deeply embedded within a network of interdependent institutions such as laws, regulation, social norms, and organizational structure. According to this perspective, market cannot be fully understood without acknowledging the influence of these institutions that shape incentive, reduce uncertainties, and facilitate cooperation among economic agents. Today, I will explain how the concept of interdependence plays a crucial role in understanding economic system through this institutional lens, demonstrating why ignoring this relationship can lead to incomplete or misleading conclusions about market behavior and economic development. First, it is important to understand that economics is closely connected to politics, law, culture, and ideology. Economic activities do not happen in isolation. They are shaped by politics rules like taxes and regulations, law that protect property and enforce contracts, cultural attitudes toward money and work, and the ideas or belief people hold about the economy. All these social factors together create the environment where economic decisions take place. Second, institutional economics challenges the traditional view that markets operate independently, driven only by supply and demand. Instead, it emphasizes that markets are embedded with institutions such as governments, legal system, and social norms. These institutions set the rules, shape incentive, reduce uncertainties, and help people cooperate. Without considering this factor, we get an incomplete picture of how economy actually functions. Now let's jump into the next point, which is focus on institution. Institutional economics believe that it's not just individual choices that shape economic behavior, but the institutions around them. Laws, customer, labor unions, and credit system all create the rules that guide how people interact economically. These institutions act like a framework setting the boundaries and incentive for economic activity. Because this institution involve over time economic behavior also changes with them. So to truly understand how the economy works, we need to look at how this social structure influence what people and organizations can do and how they make the decision. John Kenneth Galbraith made a major contribution to institutional economics by introducing the concept of the dependence effect. According to this idea, in modern economies, especially those dominated by large corporations, consumer demand is not always based on genuine or natural needs. Instead, companies use advertising and marketing to create desires and shape what people think they want. In conclusion, the institutionalist approach give us a deeper and more realistic understanding of how the modern economy functions. Unlike traditional models that isolate economic behavior from its broader context, institutionalism highlight the interdependence between individuals, institutions, and society. It reminds us that economic outcomes are shaped not just by market, but by laws, norms, culture, politics, and history, all which are deeply connected. This perspective is especially important today as we face complex challenges like inequality, climate change, and global economic instability.
Hi everyone, my name is Kong Yin Yoi with matrix number 299888. In this presentation, I will be talking about one of the most influential and unconventional economics in history, Thorsten Bandel Veblen, the founder of the Institutional School of Economics. Veblen was born in 1857 in Wisconsin. He came from a Norwegian immigrant family and taught at prestigious universities like Stanford and Chicago. He had a difficult personality. He described as bitter, skeptical, and reclusive, but his ideas were brilliant and still matter today. Even though he authored 11 major works, he never held a permanent professorship. Why? Because he did not fit in intellectually or socially. Theory of the leisure class described conspicuous consumption as spending done just to show off wealth, not for practical use. People buy luxury items like shiny hats or real flowers to gain social status. Even the poor imitate this behavior to seem higher class. He also observed a tendency in the leisure class to avoid useful work. They choose roles like politics, military, or sport and games, not because they produce real value, but because these roles are seen as respectable and maintain social status. Veblen explained that the leisure class is conservative. They resist change and hold on to outdated beliefs and habits. These traditions are inherited from the past and evolve very slowly. He summed this up in his famous quote, "Whatever is wrong," meaning institutions always fall behind society's actual needs. This cultural lag slows down progress, and since the wealth benefit from the current systems, they are often the biggest obstacle to reform. Veblen did not just criticize society, he challenged the foundations of economics itself. He rejected the idea that people make rational decisions based on pleasure and pain, calling this model unrealistic. In his view, people don't just calculate utility, they are social beings shaped by status, habits, and institutions. He also as accused that neoclassical economics of defending inequality, claiming their theories serve to justify private property and the existing distribution of wealth rather than explain the real world behavior. Veblen believed that humans naturally want to do good work. He called this the instinct for workmanship. It's a drive to create, improve, and contribute to future generations. But capitalism, in his view, corrupt this instinct. Business owners prioritize vendability, what sells, not serviceability, or what's actually useful. He introduced the idea of business sabotage, deliberate restrictions on output like monopolies or speculative manipulations to raise profit. Instead of rewarding quality, the system always often rewards marketing manipulations and waste. Veblen believed that credit expansion helps business compete, but it also makes the economy unstable. Companies borrow money to beat the reverse, but this lower profits overall. The problem is that these loans are often based on existing assets like stocks, buildings, which do not increase the production. He explained the cycle like this. First, we get a boom where credit raises the assets price. Then come a crisis when the assets cannot support the debt, so business fail. Finally, a depression hits with price drops, wage cuts, and creditors' control. Veblen said capitalism tries to fix by forming monopolies or starting wars to absorb the extra production, but these are wasteful solutions. Veblen hoped for a society led by engineers, not capitalists, who would manage production based on efficiency and public goods. He called this the Soviet of technicians. Though idealistic, his vision influenced later economists like John Kenneth Galbraith and anticipated issues like planned obsolescence, and consumer branding. In short, Veblen challenged both capitalism and mainstream economics, leaving a legacy that's still relevant today. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Tan Junyu and my metric number is 299786. So let me begin by introducing the key figure of today's presentation, Wesley Cram Mitchell, a highly influential American economist. Mitchell was born in 1874 in Rushville, Illinois, a small town in the Midwest. His economic journey was impressive. In 1899, he earned his PhD from the University of Chicago, where he studied under notable economists, including Tertius Veblen, the father of institutional economics. After completing his doctorate, Mitchell started his career at the U.S. Central Office in Washington, where he was exposed to large-scale data collection and experience that would shape his passion for statistical analysis. Over the years, he held teaching and research positions at several leading universities: the University of Chicago, the University of California, Columbia University, and the New School for Social Research, which was known for progressive thinking and economic reform. Mitchell remained active in research and teaching until his passing in 1948. Wesley Cram Mitchell was not only a brilliant student of Tertius Veblen, but also a major force in shaping institutional economics. He focused on empirical research, especially in studying business cycle and economic fluctuation. Unlike many economists of his time, Mitchell critiqued abstract theories and believed that economic analysis should be grounded in real data and cultural context. His most impactful legacy was helping to establish the National Bureau of Economic Research. It's called NBER, which remains a leading institution for economic data today. Overall, Mitchell's work provided the statistical foundation that brought Veblen's idea into practical research. Mitchell believes that economy is fundamentally a science of human behavior, and he strongly advocates for less theoretic and more empirical research. He emphasized using quantitative analysis and accurate data collection to truly understand how economics work. In 1920, he founded the National Bureau of Economic Research, or we call NBER, and led it for 25 years, turning it into a hub for data-driven economic studies. One of his most notable achievements was pioneering research on national income distribution. Even though Mitchell was an institutionalist, it's interesting that the NBER later became home to many orthodox economists. His commitment to adaptive and large-scale statistical work has left a lasting legacy in economic research. So why do cycles happen? Mitchell gives us 4 key answers. First, cycle only exists in money economies, society where everything revolves around making and spending money. Second, independence means a shock in one sector like housing or banking spread everywhere. Third, profit expectation drive decision. Business invest when they smell future profit. And finally, cycles are self-generating. Each phase boom, crisis, depletion, revival creates the next. No external stocks required. It's like a feedback loop built into the system. So let's unpack Mitchell's 4 pillars. Money economy. Cycle craft where credit and profit rules. No money, no cycle. Independence, firm, banks and workers are linked. A hiccup in manufacturing, it will ripple through supplier, lender and consumer. Profit motive. Business are not evil for chasing profit, it's survival. Lose game and you will out of the game. Endogenous dynamics. Cycles are not caused by wars or pandemic. They are self-generate. Each phase plants the seed of the next. Prosperity leads to crisis to depreciation, and depreciation back to revival. Capitalized in Mitchell views is a perpetual motion machine of up and down. Let's walk through the cycle. Revival after a depletion, costs are low, debts are clearer, and optimize returns. Business start hiring, consumer spend, and the wheels turns. Prosperity, everyone making money, but slowly, costs rise, wage, materials loan, profit margin shrink, crisis, the tipping point, overproduction, debts are default, panic thing, 2008 housing crash, banks freeze, job vanish, depletion, the painful reset, business cut costs, worker accept lower wage, and eventually the cycle start anew. Mitchell, Juniors, showing how each phase logically lead to the next. No magic, just cold, hard economy, mechanic. Now, here is the paradox. Why does prosperity always end in crisis? Mitchell answer, prosperity shows the seed of its own destructions. Rising cost over time pay, inefficient worker and pricey material eat into profits. Marginal firm in a boom, even big business jump in, they produce cheaply but throw the market, driving price down. Credit addition. Easy loan during good time turn into unpayable debts when the tide turns. By the late stage of prosperity, profits are squeezed from all sides. It's like a balloon strikes too thin. Eventually, it pops. Let's begin with Mitchell's view on why our economy experienced frequent crises. In 1935, Mitchell observes that the business system automatic mechanized are flawed. They can't fix themselves effectively. This flaw becomes more obvious during recession and depression. Several structural changes have made the business cycle more severe. Markets have expanded, big business combinations have grown, and more people have moved from farm to city. Unlike before, farmers are now market dependent. Instead of self-sufficient, there are also a shift in the types of goods we buy. The rise of semi-durable goods, things we can stop purchasing when times are through, make recession worse. Mitchell believes private business planning alone is not enough to deal with this challenge. Instead, he saw a need for government intervention and broader social planning to stabilize the economy and protect people from economic hardships. Mitchell did not just point out problems, he offered a solution: national planning. He argued that social planning is not un-American. In fact, American history is full of brand efforts like the US Constitution, Hamilton's economic recovery plans, and our wartime mobilization from 1917 to 1918. However, Mitchell also one of two big challenges in planning. First, it has to agree on common social goals in a democracy. Without shared objectives, even good plans fail. Second, piecemeal of isolated planning often creates unintended problems. For example, prohibition lead to illegal alcohol trade and crime syndicates without no muddy plan. Therefore, Mitchell argued for systematic and technically sound national planning. He believes that some problems, especially economic ones, are too big for individual or business to solve alone. Only well-organized public planning and other can lead to meaningful, lasting solutions.
Hello everyone, my name is Muhila Najwa binti Razaki and my matric number is 300980. Today I will present John Kenneth Galbraith, economic theorist. Galbraith was a Canadian economist who lived from 1908 to 2006. He studied at University of Toronto in California and had a diverse career. He worked for the US government during World War II, became a professor at Harvard University, and was even an expert on far extent art and novelist. But most importantly, he became one of the most influential critics of neoclassical economics, challenging conventional economic thinking and focusing on the flaw of modern capitalism. Galbraith's first major concept is conventional wisdom. He defined this as ideas that are familiar and widely accepted by society, but are no longer relevant to current conditions. The key problem with conventional wisdom is that it's inherently conservative. It resists change to new ideas even when circumstances have evolved. Galbraith observed that ideas become obsolete, but people continue to accept them simply because they are familiar. What made his first unique was that his attack focused on challenging the ideas themselves, not criticizing the people who held them. He believed we desperately need to challenge the outdated economic thinking that are no longer serve us. Next is the dependence effect, which completely revolutionizes how we think about consumer choice. Galbraith argued that large enterprises create consumer wants through massive advertising campaigns. As production increased, brand creation also increased proportionally. This means consumers don't have true sovereign choice as traditional economics suggests. Instead, wants are artificially manufactured by companies, not naturally occurring. This challenges the fundamental supply and demand theory we learn in basic economics. In Galbraith's model, companies first decide what to produce, then they create the demand for it through advertising and marketing, completely reversing the traditional economic relationship. Galbraith also developed a revolutionary theory of firms. He observed that large corporations are controlled by what he called the technostructure, a professional elite consisting of executive, manager, and player. These corporations don't simply maximize profit like traditional theory suggests. Instead, their primary goals are growth and survival. The stockholder who theoretically own the company actually have the little real control over day-to-day operation. This professional elite make all the key decisions leading to practice like price fixing and market manipulation that are common in large corporations. This is completely different from small competitive firms in the market sector, where traditional economic theories might still apply. Galbraith's most powerful critique focused on consumer sovereignty and the imbalance between public and private sector. He argued that private goods are over-advertising and over-consumers, while public goods are systematically underfunded and repeated. His classic example was the contrast between luxury car and both schools and roads. We prioritize artificial rents created by advertising over essential public needs like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Galbraith called this social imbalance in resource allocation. This problem is that companies create artificial demand for private consumption, while our junior collective needs go unmet. His proposed solution was to increase public sector investment and reduce our society obsessed focus on private consumption.